people sometimes would look and say, oh, you know, you're a nice girl, and do you really know what you're getting into, and are you going to be able to handle the heat?
President-elect Donald Trump has picked former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard to be the next director of national intelligence. If confirmed by Congress, she will oversee 18 spy agencies and act as the main advisor to Donald Trump. Gabbard's appointment has stunned critics as a Democrat turned Republican has been accused of amplifying Russian propaganda in the past.
She's at best a Putin cheerleader, at worst she's a Putin asset.
She traffics in conspiracy theories and cozies up to dictators.
Putin, Assad, Erdogan.
In Russia, the reaction to her potential appointment has been gleeful.
And now she's going to be overseeing our entire intelligence community.
Tulsi Gabbard's appointment is devastating.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard, Congresswoman, veteran.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Congresswoman Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard.
So who is Tulsi Gabbard?
And how did she go from being a Democrat congresswoman to becoming Donald Trump's pick for National Director of Intelligence, an agency who oversees the CIA and NSA? In this video, the rise of Tulsi Gabbard. In 2002, at just 21 years old, Tulsi Gabbard made history by becoming the youngest woman ever elected to the Hawaii State House.
I was 21 years old and stepped way outside of my comfort zone.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Her story took a sharp turn after the events of 9/11. The attacks left a deep mark on her, and by 2003, she had enlisted in the Hawaii Army National Guard, completing her basic training between legislative sessions. By 2004, the situation in Iraq had spiraled far beyond what anyone had anticipated. What began as a swift invasion to topple Saddam Hussein had devolved into a full-blown war. The U.S. military found itself entangled in an increasingly complex conflict, one that Washington had not fully prepared for. Islamist militias and fighters from around the world were now flooding into Iraq, turning the country into a hotbed of insurgency. These groups weren't just fighting for control of Iraq, they were waging a broader ideological battle, drawing in combatants from across the Middle East and beyond. The insurgency quickly became a multi-layered conflict. It wasn't just U.S. troops versus the remnants of Saddam's regime. It was Shia militias, Sunni insurgents, Al-Qaeda affiliates, and a host of other factions vying for power. The counterinsurgency campaigns that followed were brutal and grueling. Day by day, the costs of this war were mounting, for Iraq, for the region, and for the U.S. Amid this chaos, Tulsi Gabbard was deployed with the Hawaii Army National Guard's 29th Brigade Combat Team, serving as a medical operations specialist. Her role placed her on the front lines of human suffering, treating wounded soldiers and civilians alike. She faced the brutal realities of war, constant danger, the loss of comrades, and the immense moral toll of the conflict. For Tulsi, this was transformative. Witnessing war's human cost firsthand shaped her understanding of U.S. foreign policy and planted the seeds of her later opposition to interventionist wars. Her time in Iraq left lasting scars, both physical and emotional. When she returned to the U.S. in 2006, she carried the weight of those experiences. But instead of breaking her, these challenges strengthened her resolve. This became apparent when Tulsi achieved another milestone in 2007, graduating from the Accelerated Officer Candidate School at the Alabama Military Academy, becoming the first woman in the Academy's 50-year history to earn the title of Distinguished Honor Graduate. Tulsi Gabbard's life is a strange one. Growing up in Hawaii, she developed a deep connection to the ocean, finding peace and clarity in the rhythm of the waves.
Literally every time I come home, my first stop is the ocean. I go straight home, drop my bags, put on my suit, and even if it's just for a 5-minute swim, or if it's for a surf, either way, that's my #1 priority, and wash the airplane off me and get my feet back in the sand and be grounded.
One particularly fascinating aspect of Tulsi Gabbard's life is her unexpected passion for martial arts, particularly capoeira. Capoeira is a Brazilian martial art unlike any other, combining elements of acrobatics, music, and dance in a fluid, almost performative way. This art form is as much about rhythm and expression as it is about physical combat, requiring balance, agility, and the ability to anticipate and respond to your opponent with grace. Despite describing herself as an introvert, Tulsi Gabbard's charisma is undeniably genuine. There's a compelling authenticity to her presence, whether it's playing the ukulele with Jocko Willink, a fellow Iraq War veteran, or appearing on Cameron Haynes' Lift, Run, Shoot.
That's one thing I appreciate about, remaining in the military is whether it's a ruck or run or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, what your rank is, who you think you are.
Yeah, I know.
Keeps you honest.
By 2012, Tulsi Gabbard had already made history, becoming the youngest woman elected to Congress.
Gabbard started her career in politics at the age of 21, and 10 years later, she's been referred to as the rising star of the Democratic Party.
I'm Tulsi Gabbard, candidate for Congress in Hawaii, and a captain in the Army National Guard.
Once she got there, it didn't take long for her to stand out. Her leadership and commitment to service quickly earned her the role of vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, DNC. In Congress, Tulsi championed issues like civil liberties, healthcare, and climate change. But her strongest passion was her anti-war stance.
I went and deployed to Iraq and enlisted in the military, believing the lie that was told to so many of us, to the whole country, about why it was necessary for our country to start this war in the first place. The lie that we were told by politicians, by our president, by leaders in his cabinet about how it was in our country's national security interest to go and topple this brutal dictator in Iraq who was working with Al-Qaeda, who had weapons of mass destruction, and how that posed a threat to the American people. We as service members were betrayed.
Proponents of these regime change wars routinely cite humanitarian concerns to justify this military intervention in foreign countries. But here's the reality. As a direct result of our intervention in Iraq, the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, human suffering increased dramatically. In Libya, when the U.S. led the bombing campaign to overthrow Gaddafi, the result was incredible loss of life.
Tulsi Gabbard's time as vice chair of the Democratic National Committee wasn't without its fair share of controversy. Although she initially rose to prominence within the party, her independent mindset and willingness to challenge the party's leadership eventually caused friction. The breaking point came when she publicly clashed with one of her fiercest critics, Hillary Clinton. Their feud was centered on a fundamental disagreement over foreign policy. Gabbard, a combat veteran, was staunchly opposed to Clinton's record of supporting regime change wars. As Clinton's campaign gained momentum, Tulsi took a bold stand. She broke from the establishment and threw her support behind Bernie Sanders, another outspoken critic of military intervention. This move was seismic, especially when she resigned from her DNC role to endorse Sanders. After Donald Trump's unexpected win in 2016, Tulsi made headlines again by being the first Democrat to publicly congratulate him. While the gesture seemed simple, it sent the party into a tailspin, with many accusing her of legitimizing Trump at a time when the Democrats were united in their resistance. But she wasn't afraid to criticize Trump, though.
Yesterday, President Trump offered to place our military, my brothers and sisters in uniform, under the command of Prince Mohammed bin Salman. My fellow service members and I, we are not your prostitutes. You are not our pimp.
Tulsi's unwavering, bold stances continued to set her apart from her party, and her decision to vote present on both articles of impeachment against Trump only further distanced her from the Democratic establishment, solidifying her image as a figure unwilling to conform to the party's expectations. It was the summer of 2019. The stage was set for the Democratic primary debates. Among the many debaters, Kamala Harris had checked all the right boxes to be a winning Democrat candidate.
One of the things that we've got to be clear about is that this president of the United States, Donald Trump.
But then came Tulsi Gabbard.
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. She put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California.
Harris found herself stunned, struggling to respond. By morning, the name Tulsi Gabbard was trending nationwide. In 2020, Tulsi Gabbard took the leap onto the national stage with her presidential bid. On the debate stage, Tulsi was a breath of fresh air, particularly with her calm, collected demeanor, including her famous exchanges with Senator Kamala Harris, positioned her as a clear, anti-establishment voice, though it also drew significant ire from many within the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton took aim at Gabbard during the 2020 campaign.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians.
In her response, Gabbard calls Clinton the queen of warmongers. Unlike many of her opponents, who had access to large donor networks and party backing, Gabbard's campaign was primarily funded by private donations. She described the struggles she faced during the campaign, including living in a poor and dangerous area of Washington, D.C., and even traveling in economy class to keep costs down.
One of them. Not one, literally not one on either side who's not in the top 1% for income, but you're not.
No.
Why doesn't anyone ever say that?
Yeah, because it is the assumed norm. It's not the exception. What they're doing is the norm. So why would they talk about it? There's nothing to talk about because they assume that every member of Congress, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, the day you walk out, you get your payday.
Despite her passionate platform and growing grassroots support, her campaign couldn't generate enough momentum to secure the Democratic nomination. In March 2020, Tulsi made the difficult decision to suspend her bid. The Democratic Party seemed to drift further into progressive, woke policies. One of the most outspoken critics was Tulsi Gabbard, who made the dramatic decision to sever ties with the Democratic Party.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party. It's now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness.
Her new rhetoric found a strong following among conservatives, and in a move that shocked many, she publicly endorsed Donald Trump. Less than a month later, Gabbard took the unprecedented step of formally aligning herself with the Republican Party.
And this is why I'm joining the Republican Party.
Now let's get to the fallout over Trump's nomination for Director of National Intelligence. The former House Democrat turned Trump supporter, Tulsi Gabbard, has long criticized U.S. foreign policy and has even been accused of echoing Russian propaganda. Gabbard has also been a consistent defender and booster and apologist for Russia's Vladimir Putin.
She has been known for echoing Kremlin propaganda, including claims like this.
Here are the undeniable facts. There are 25 to 30 U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. Ukraine is in an active war zone with widespread bombing, artillery, and shelling, and these facilities, even in the best of circumstances, could easily be compromised. The Biden-Harris administration needs to work with Russia, Ukraine, NATO, the UN to immediately implement a ceasefire for all military action in the vicinity of these labs until they're secured and these pathogens are destroyed.
The stakes couldn't be higher, and some are worried her unorthodox foreign policy stances, which have even aligned with authoritarian regimes, could be a liability when it comes to overseeing the nation's most classified operations.
I've said before, she's at best a Putin cheerleader, at worst she's a Putin asset. For the past decade, she has done nothing but defend Vladimir Putin and parrot Putin and Russian propaganda.
I don't agree with her opinion about Ukraine, but she's allowed to have it. It doesn't make her a Russian asset.
Because everything she's done the past 10 years and said has been exactly what Russia would want her to say or do. So she's either an asset or a dupe.
Well, Pierce, I mean, first of all, I'll just say that I didn't realize I was doing this panel with two Ukrainian assets who were going to be spreading Zelensky talking points. So I'm appalled. That is a brain-dead non-argument. So let me not start with that.
Gabbard is known for spreading Russian propaganda on fringe far-right sites, which is why Hillary Clinton said Tulsi Gabbard is being groomed by Russia, but only because she's too old to be groomed by Matt Gaetz. Now, to Gabbard's credit, she vehemently denies that she's a Russian spy, saying, "Нет, это грязная ложь."
It is the most vicious, dishonest, despicable smear to use this innuendo where you say, you know, Putin, Russia's thrilled that Tulsi Gabbard's in there, and it kind of leaves the viewer with this like implicit accusation that this woman who served her country, is a traitor to her country, when that means nothing. Look, in 2002, if you opposed the war in Iraq, Saddam Hussein probably would have been happy to see you in there. But that doesn't mean you're a traitor to your country. That just meant that in 2002, you were right while the entire establishment was wrong.